at what point should I would at what point or size in a company's, I'm talking CPG here obviously, but at what point in a company's history should they consider a large scale media or print type of an pure advertising type effort? You know, it seems to be a difficult question to address at varying levels of size of a company, but a lot of them want to get that full page ad on the back, the back cover. What's the right time to do that? What's the right environment to do that? Or is that not as effective as it used to be?
Well, I think there's still definitely a role for those kind of print and premium kinds of options, but I think that the challenge is knowing. To me, it's more distribution driven than anything. Revenue is one thing, but to me, what drives it is where are your customers? Where's your distribution? What stores are you in? What penetration do you have? And oftentimes we'll go to customers and say, just because you're in 3 major markets in the U.S., you're thinking, oh, well, it's time to buy Reader's Digest or People.
Right.
And our point is, no, what it's maybe time to do is look at doing some regional media buys. I think a lot of clients don't realize that you can buy Newsweek and Time and everybody else on a regional basis and focus on certain areas of the country, or you can buy certain demographic mixes of those magazines. So it isn't always just going in and buying full bore People. It's a matter of going in and buying an age break in prevention or buying a regional issue of Newsweek. And we encourage clients to look at that. It allows you also to walk before you run,
Right.
before you're, and you waste a lot of. Biggest problem with those kinds of magazine buys is they're vanity buys to some degree, and you waste a lot of impressions.
Right.
So to me, it's less how big should you be to do it, and it's more does your distribution warrant it. If you literally have penetration nationwide, then by far the efficiencies are there to buy national print or national broadcasts. But if you don't, look at regional options or ways to test the response in a market, before you blow it out.
Yeah, that's some good advice, Jeff. Appreciate it. I mean, the biggest thing I think I circled here was in that $25 to $50 million range. Now it's time for some serious media planning. That's probably the one thing that I kind of starred on my notes here is the serious media planning. Now it's time to really think it through because you've got all the money to blow. Let me ask you a question about.
And it's easy to blow money in the wrong places at that level.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yep. You and I have talked a lot about the importance of really knowing your target. And when I coach smaller companies and I ask them, who's their target market, most, I won't say, all, but most, their target market is way too broad. It tends to be very, very broad. The smaller the company, it gets a little bit more, it can get more focused. I'm reading a book right now that talks about the red velvet rope policy, where, you choose the customers you want to do business with, so you can be extremely targeted in that. Can you speak to the importance of target marketing, and if you have any advice for young companies that their target's probably a little too broad, what they can do to narrow that in?
Well, I think that I'm really an advocate of research and market research, and I think that can come. You say market research to a client, and especially in that lower echelon income level or revenue level, they freak out because it's like, oh, I can't afford focus groups, and oh, that's $50,000, and oh, I can't do that. And my point is, there's levels. You can do focus groups in a budget sensitive way. You can gather input through the sales force. You can talk to your customers. To me, I think that even at young companies, I do encourage them to invest money in some qualitative research, whether it's very informally done or whether it's more structured like a focus group, whether it's a mall intercept, whatever it is, to get out and interface with their customers and learn more about them. That's, I think, the best way to target is to hear your customers talk and begin to understand psychographically. You have a sense demographically of where they are, but when you get one-on-one in qualitative situations, you learn the psychographics, how they buy, what their attitudes are, and a lot of times it reveals to you media options of you're like, oh, we should be doing this. That's what these people are into. And I've come out of many focus groups with a knowledge of how to effectively target media to reach a certain group by just realizing, wow, the consumers of this client, they all have a common interest in this area, and we could go kind of own that area. You know what I mean? And so I think that research, not to beat it to death, but I think that market research is critical at that phase.
Absolutely. And you're right. A lot of the smaller companies are like, if I've got to spend 10 grand somewhere, what are some of the easy ways that they can do market research? You mentioned customer conversations, and I learned the most at Garden of Life by getting out in the stores and talking to the people who actually sold my product right there at the shelf. What else can a small company do with a limited budget to really learn who their customer is?
I've seen companies, and I know marketing and executives who will go to a store and stand in the aisles and not accost people, but when they buy their product or they buy a competitor product, we'll talk to them. I mean, I understand that's a little dicey sometimes. If it's done correctly, it can be done in a positive way. But exit interviews at stores. You can do one thing that's helpful, that is doing offering a rebate in your packaging to have customers fill out a quick survey. You offer. We did this at Nature's Way quite a bit, where we'd offer consumers $5 to return a questionnaire for a rebate that would come inside of a box of Ginkgold or some other product that we had. So a consumer would, and we got an amazing return on that. And this is questions about, would you repurchase? What sort of media habits? What's your favorite television shows? How much radio do you consume? And over time, several hundred responses that allowed us to get a pretty good sense of who the consumer was. And $5 a response, you can't get that anywhere for a research response. Nobody does that. So that's a pretty reasonable way. Your retailers, your sales force. Even getting online and managing and doing tweet searches to find out what people are saying about your brand, what they're talking about. Even doing tweet searches just to find out what they're talking about in general. I mean, all those kinds of things are less expensive ways. On the trade side, what we used to do is we'd go to trade shows like Expo West, ask some retailers who were already going to be there to come have a nice lunch, buffet lunch, sit them in a conference room and talk to them for an hour, get their opinions. That's a great way to get retailer feedback. You have someone moderate. But other than that, you're just getting a conference room for an hour.
Yeah.
And it didn't cost them that much. And we've done that many times.
Well, that's excellent advice. You just paid for the price of admission to this e-interview for a lot of young companies. Those are all great hints. Two last.